And I didn't even click the intro countdown, so we were just going straight to live. Hello and welcome everybody to episode number 3 of Simply Saltwater, where we try and make it a little bit easier to get into the saltwater part of the hobby. Whether you're transitioning over from fresh for your first time or going straight into saltwater, not having any aquariums at all. So I appreciate everybody being here. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Of course, I've got my buddy, my pal, and my co-host, Chattanooga Ed, which is, I think, down below me there. Let me swap that over. There we go. Otherwise, it's going to throw me off the whole time when I go to Ed. And, of course, Mike from the Fish Tank Barn. If you haven't seen the other 2 episodes, I encourage you to go check those out as well, where we touched on tank size and water in terms of what your actual salt water should be composed of and where to get it and all those things. But Ed is our beginner into the freshwater world. Never done it before. I'm kind of the intermediate level. And then Fish Tank Barn, Mike is our expert. So I hope you all enjoy tonight. We're going to have fun talking about substrate and live rock and some things you should look for and things you should also look out for. With that being said, I guess we'll start with the sand part of it. So as mentioned, we've been through, recommended tank sizes and our recommendations for sourcing your salt water. But we probably want some substrate in there. Now, you could go bare bottom.
But I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who do.
What do you want to touch on that for a minute first?
There's a lot of people who do. They just don't want, the sand and substrate to harbor nutrients, and it's easier to clean, things of that nature. But at the same time, me personally, I don't like that look. I like the sand. I think it looks more natural to me to have the sand in the bottom. But there are a lot of people who do run bare bottom reefs.
Now, in saltwater, don't I want like a substrate to like harvest little growing things for? Because I would like to get a mandarin, goby.
Right.
And so, don't I need the sand to like grow little crustacean?
No, things? I mean, those can grow without the sand. I mean, they can grow in the rocks and everything else.
Wow.
But I mean, if you want to like make copepods, for example, they're called copepods.
Yeah.
There are actually some that you can commercially buy them, and then we're gonna go down the rabbit hole for just a moment.
Absolutely.
But to make copepod, you can do it. It's difficult because you need to make like the whole ecosystem for the copepod with the algae and grow like macroalgae or microalgae, etc. to do that. But but that's how they've gotten a lot of the saltwater fish to breed, is by doing the parvocalyonus copepods. So
now, is a copepod like the size of a Daphnia?
No, it's way smaller.
Oh, even smaller. I thought you might say bigger, like a pill bug or something.
No. No, there's like a rotifer, which a lot of people use for clownfish, and then the copepods, especially when they're Naplii, which is like babies, they're even smaller than the rotifers.
Wow. Okay. Cool. I'm learning stuff every time we sit down and have a talk.
Now, I don't remember like how many microns each one of them are. But
that's all right. I don't know how big a micron is.
I really don't either. I know it's just not big.
Yeah.
So let's say I've got lots of freshwater tanks. So maybe I've got a couple extra bags of pool filter sand lying around. Mike, could you tell me why I may not want to dump that in my tank to start up my saltwater setup?
There's a lot of like pool filter sand, play sand. There's a lot of things like silicates, for example, and those can cause, or phosphates and things like that can cause a lot of algae issues in your tank. Also, like cyanobacteria, for example, as well. So there's a lot of things in that sand that may have adverse effects on your tank, for example.
Absolutely, yes. And that's, although I am typically the advocate for the cheap route, that's one thing I won't necessarily recommend. I've done it before. I definitely would not do it in a fish or in a reef tank. I've done it in a fish only with live rock tank or a Fowler tank, where I didn't so much care about some of the unwanted algae. But I would definitely say if you're going the reef route, because we always have that branch off when we're talking anything salt. It's your reef tank and your Fowler tank. Definitely would not recommend it at all if you're going with a reef tank. So what are we looking at when we get in the store in terms of getting our live sand? I know that there are a lot of different options. I guess.
Go ahead. Sorry, James.
I would just say you want to explain or talk a little bit about why they call it live sand, because that's typically what you see it referenced as.
Because it has a lot of the bacteria already in it. It's seeded with the beneficial bacteria already in it. So almost kind of like you say, like the Fritz, I think it's 9. Like you get in salt and fresh water. It's kind of the same thing. Live rock also has a lot of that beneficial bacteria as well. So it's definitely something to keep in mind, is that has that beneficial bacteria. What I like to do personally, and what I did in the new tank I'm setting up, is I actually put in a lot of aragonite first, and then I just seeded it with a smaller bag of the live sand.
Okay.
Now, over the years, I go to pet stores I'm sure you do too, but I go to fish stores all the time, and I see they have these big, black tubs that we use for summer tubbing filled with the live rock. And they just they just pull it out. But where do they keep the live sand? Do they have a tote of that and you bring a 5-gallon bucket in, or do they?
It's generally in a bag. It's in a little bag.
Prepackaged bag?
Prepackaged, yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's in a kind of fairly thick plastic bag. So
do I have to worry about that expiring, or?
I don't think so. I'll have to look at the bag I had. I think I still got it.
Let me grab what I've got. I don't think it's saltwater. I think it's freshwater.
But
this is a live thing.
This is why I love having different perspectives or learning levels, because that's a question I don't think Mike or myself would have thought to answer. But that's a very good question. If somebody's never done it before, like, well, you've got this big tub full of live rock over here. Where's the live sand at? So I like that.
That was good.
Did have a couple people mention the point of also really enjoying the sand sifters in saltwater. So the bare bottoms, a no-go for them. And then Mike's Aquatics and Things, trying to jump straight to it. He said, just hit me with the truth. Live sand, the best substrate, question mark? Yes, question mark? Yeah, absolutely.
So it would be like a bag like this, just salt.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Awesome. This was on sale, so I grabbed it. When I see things super cheap, I'll grab it because you never know.
Absolutely. Well, no. Also, that is a very good point, Mike. Like you mentioned. Well, I guess I'll let you. Why would you go with that layer of aragonite and then put the live sand in there?
Oh wait, I can't believe I missed aragonite. Is that his base?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's basically, I like it because of the grain size of it. It's a personal preference thing. I know there's stuff like oolite that's out there that's a lot finer, but it compacts a lot, and I really don't like that. So I really like the aragonite, and the live sand I actually bought was an aragonite live sand as well.
Okay.
So I found it's like corresponding partner of live sand. I bought like 2 40-pound bags of the regular aragonite, and then I bought another smaller bag of just the live.
Now, how do you feel about somebody dumping in like a half a bag of crushed coral first, and then the live sand on top of that?
That's fine. Crushed coral it was used for years and still is used. There's nothing wrong with it. I know there's people who don't like it, but it's basically there's no issues with that.
Awesome.
Yeah, we did have a select pet in the chat was asking anyone even use crushed coral anymore. I remember back in the day that was big. Yeah, and I also feel like that's something that a lot of freshwater hobbyists may be at least vaguely familiar with, given that a lot of us use crushed coral to buffer our water. So,
yeah, that's why I like to have it, just for bringing up pH for guppies. So I figure I'd like to do that for this tank too, and then I have an excuse to buy a bag.
How is your water up in Tennessee? Is it hard or is it like neutral?
It's pretty neutral. It's about 7.2 where I'm at. So
pretty hard or
Missouri was so much harder. It was like 7.7, and it had lots of lime in it and calcium. So
Yeah, and my water's a little tough, there are so many different municipal sources. Like my local fish store, they're on a different municipal water source than even I am, and they're 3 minutes away from me. But my water has literally corroded the rubber flapper in the back of the toilet and the bolts. Several times the bolts that hold the tank, it has just rusted them out. It's really tough. So there's a lot of variance.
And Bob Kaler's has a huge swing. He'll have like 6.5 all the way to 7.5. It's all up and down for him. So, and he's just 20 miles from me.
I mean, we're kind of lucky here in Michigan. We're surrounded by a large bodies of water.
Just a couple, yeah.
Doesn't it come out brown out of your tap?
No.
I know. I'm just giving you a hard time.
No. We do not get our water from the Flint River.
I'm just giving you the business.
No. I'm about half an hour from Flint, but we're on Detroit City water. So, like, literally, I think most of the eastern half of the state is on Detroit City water. Like, I don't know what the line is, but I looked at our water report a couple years ago, and our water actually comes from Lake Huron. So
nice.
Runs about 8-ish or so.
So we've got a couple questions I want to grab, just that way we don't get too far away from them. Chris Trapp was asking, can you use the same ammonia test strips for salt and fresh water? And also from Chris, have you used Dr. Tim's instant cycle or any other kickstart bacteria?
I know for the API test strips, you can use those. But the colors are different.
Mm-hmm.
The co-op ones, I don't know.
I honestly don't either. I'm going to have to try that out.
I asked in the live stream, and Corey said that he tested it in his brine shrimp, and it looked like it worked, but he didn't really, since he's a freshwater company, he really didn't worry about it.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing a lot.
Oh, no, I remember that because there was also something I vaguely remember, but it was regarding like the manufacturer didn't necessarily say yes to the salt water, so he wasn't going to say yes to the salt water.
Right.
He had found okay results in his usage.
API says fresh and salt right there.
Yep, or the Tetra ones too, as well. So.
Now, I don't like the Tetra as well. I find it gives me kind of weird reading sometimes. But I mean, spray, everybody's water is different, so it's going to give everybody else a different reading too.
Yeah, I may have to take some down to my local fish store because he's got the really fancy spindle test. I can't think of the Aquaspin tester with the little discs that go into it. So I may have to do some comparison testing since I'll have that as kind of a base. So I'll have to check that out. Good question. But
the second part of that question was the auto starts or the instant starts.
I've not used Dr. Tim's. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I've not heard of anything wrong with it. I kind of like the natural way with live rock and things of that nature, using the live sand.
Now with live rock, are you ever afraid of getting parasites like those worms?
Bristle worms are fine. There's all kinds of other crazy stuff. I mean, I got an amphipod one time. I know I was actually looking for that picture right before it came out. I couldn't find it. I have it around somewhere, but it literally looked like a big beetle. It was just walking around on the live rock.
Oh, gross, crazy!
But that's part of the fun of it, and you can get other cool stuff too, right?
So I didn't order type of a roly poly that's water.
Okay. Yeah, it was a little white roly poly. That like you look like a bleached little tiny roly poly. He was about yay big or so.
That's awesome, actually.
Yeah, I'm like, what is this thing? Like,
you definitely get some what is this thing moments in saltwater, especially if you check that tank out at night when all the little creek crawlies like to come out. Before we get too far from the sand portion of the show, we jump over to the rock. I guess what would your recommendation be in terms of your sand bed depths? Do you find that there's anything that you would prefer or recommend, or is it a visual appeal type of thing?
I Not a huge deep sand bed, just because of if you get the pockets and the gas pockets and stuff like that. So I'm more of a middle of the road, like an inch ish. I know. I mean, there was a lot of people, and I did this for a while, where I actually put like play sand in a bucket and made like a bucket filter. Like I took the bucket, I'll use my cup, and I had it, it's an instant ocean bucket. I had a bulkhead on each side of it, and water just kind of went over it and was sort of like a deep sand filter. People were making those for a while for kind of the anaerobic bacteria and filtration.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, and to answer that bacteria question, I personally have not used the bacteria in a bottle. I've seen a lot of people use it with great results, but I'm also very much the old-fashioned way, like Mike mentioned, with seeding it. Especially you're going with live sand, and you're at least going to get typically some live rock, which we'll get into more here in just a second.
Ginger has a question too for you.
Yeah, we've got a couple of them I need to get to.
Awesome.
But yeah, I really haven't found a need for it. But I will say the people that have used it and used it properly, I've heard and seen good results from it. I guess one other thing I would point out in terms of your sand and rock, kind of as a segue over to rock as well, one thing you'll want to keep in mind, kind of, at least in my experience, I always will either put my base layer of rock in first, or when I put it in, make sure that it gets kind of pushed down through the sand to the glass on the bottom, just because I have found with the live sand being very, very fine, if you get any sort of sand sifters, or especially if you get larger fish in there, like some of your eels and things that are going to want to wiggle around in the sand and move rock around, you don't want there to be an avalanche in your tank. You want that base rock to be really sturdy and typically up against that bottom glass down in the sand.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. There's people who also use egg crate. They'll put a layer of egg crate on the bottom of the tank and put the rock on the egg crate, and then put the sand over the egg crate as well. I've seen people do that as well.
Yeah, that's a very good way to do it as well. I've done that a couple of times before, years and years back, but I don't seem to have any egg crate in my arsenal anymore, so I haven't done that as of late. But that's a very good point, especially just to keep it from scratching around on the glass and keep it pretty for future use.
I was actually planning on doing that with egg crate. I forgot to tell you guys that.
So I'm going to grab a couple of questions before we dive into the live rock portion, as well as say a thank you to Aquatic Marine here in a second. I hope you're doing well, Kenny. We're talking a lot about you tonight. Let me get back up here. There was Dr. Tim's. Drink water, says Fisherman Fever. Why do you need a protein skimmer in salt water but not in fresh water? Because we want to sell you one. No, I'm just kidding. Mike, do you would you like to answer that one?
So basically, the way because a protein skimmer won't really work in fresh water. So basically, what a protein skimmer does is it creates bubbles, and the proteins that are in salt water will attach to the bubbles, and then once you set it up, it'll foam out of the top, and you'll collect it in a collecting cup, and then you'll either have it drain into like a bucket or something else. But in fresh water, it doesn't work. The proteins don't attach to it, and so you can't really. You're just making bubbles with no use, basically.
Yeah, it's got a much different molecular structure, a lot more different than you would expect. And I guess in terms of the why is you're going. I don't want to say you're going for a higher water purity or quality level, but those proteins, I guess, tend to build up to a harmful rate in salt water, to the point to where they make it necessary in most cases. Can you run a saltwater tank without a protein skimmer? Yes. Is it advisable that you have one in most conditions? Yes. But there's always that gray area, especially when I get involved.
I mean, you can run things like turf scrubbers, and there's all kinds of different things you can.
Well, and like I offset with either stocking levels or water changes. is another thing you could do if you're like, okay, I'm not going to do any type of protein skimming on my 5-gallon. That's just not feasible.
I mean, and there's the expense of it too, right? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, depending on how large of a tank you're running, it's a, I think the one that I have on mine when I bought it was like $650, $700 at the time. I mean, it was 5-6 years ago or longer ago that I bought that. But.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that you can definitely find some less expensive options. But I feel like, as with anything, once you get to a certain level of low price, you're also getting into really low quality. So that's just something to kind of be mindful of. But you can get some decent deals on them. And they even have some neat, they've got hang on the backs. They've got ones that would go in your sump, depending upon if you've got a sump set up. A lot of different variations to kind of bend and cater to whatever needs you have. Where was it? Zen Ginger? There it is. The Zen Ginger said, speaking of, would a protein skimmer be useful in a brackish mud skipper tank if I have a weird film on the water sometimes? Or are they mainly for full salt?
It would work, I would say.
I believe it would. I wonder if the film is just simply the film for being stagnant. I'm not sure. But, like say LRB's tanks or tanks where you don't really get surface agitation a whole lot. You see a lot of film buildup because you don't have the air bubbles breaking at the surface and causing that micro spatter, technical term there, to break that film up.
But technically, a skimmer would work on any fish tank, freshwater too, just to break up that top film if you want.
Well, right.
You've got to, and that's where we kind of get into, this is a rabbit hole thing again, but you've got surface skimmers and you've got protein skimmers, and they're not the same.
Oh, so, like, did I say protein or did I say surface?
Well, I think you just said skimmers, but I wanted to clarify because you'll see like a lot of hang-on back filters do surface skimming, but that's not to be confused with a protein skimmer. They're actually two completely different things that do two completely different jobs. One is simply for actual skimming of the surface water to keep that film off and to suck water from the top of the water column, and the other one is serving a purpose with causing that bond of the proteins to the air bubbles and then removing that from the system, and then coming into this wonderful smelling goo that you have to clean out and remove.
Yeah. They I would say, like, since we're on the topic of filtration, one of my favorite pieces of filtration for saltwater, if you're not doing a reef, is actually the Zis filter, the Zis that Co-op sells. It's actually one of my favorite things.
I've not thought of that. That's interesting. I'm glad you told me that.
Just because it has the rotating biological filtration. You have the mechanical with the little sponge. And it's just something I like for like a smaller tank. If you're not doing a reef, obviously with the bubbles, but I just like that little, that little canister of bacteria, basically.
Yeah, no, that's a very good idea. Let's see. Paul Stero says, I just tried the Co-op strips. They worked fast and basically confirmed the API master kit. It also told me my buffer had disappeared. Aragonite went into the canister. Very cool. Yeah, I've got the multi-test and the ammonias. I'm still playing with those. I want to do a little bit more with them before I actually give a review versus going, hey, I got a product 2 days ago. I'm going to do a review video. That way I can get some honest time behind it and do a couple of comparisons. Great information, Paul. As always, it's good to see you, my friend. Let's see. Rounded Rob was saying, okay, after established, how often do you do water changes? Just an average guess. I would say that's really going to be one of those every tank is its own ecosystem type of things, in my opinion. So it's really hard to, and I know this is a non-answer and I apologize for that, but it's really hard to say, well, do it, once a week, do it once a month, because the bio load from one of my tanks to another one of my tanks could vary so greatly. How much rock do I have in one versus the other? But I will say that it is one of those things, just like most other things in the aquarium hobby, fresh or salt, is you can make it as easy or hard as you would like to. Can you put, 4 Oscars in a 75-gallon tank and be doing water changes 3 times a week? Absolutely, people do it. Could you put one in there and have it, a naturally balanced aquarium that maybe you change water once a month or once every couple of months? Like you've seen a lot of heavily planted tanks that are well balanced, seasoned tanks. And I feel like the same really applies to saltwater. If you get a really well established and seasoned tank, you've got lots of live rock and you've got your live sand at work, and even getting into things that we'll talk about in upcoming episodes, like chaeto algae and your macroalgae and stuff like that, refugiums. You can definitely go longer lengths of time without the water changes. But I honestly, even though I'm somebody that I don't test a whole lot, I have test strips and test kits and all that. If you're new to saltwater, I would suggest that you kind of get in the habit of testing again, just so you get familiar with your parameters. You get a feel for, they use different colors on a lot of the tests versus your fresh water, especially if you get into pH and stuff. A lot of them, I think, run higher. But it's one of those areas I would really recommend that you kind of get in the habit of testing again for a little while you familiarize yourself with it if you've never done saltwater. And then you'll get a feel for, okay, this is what my typical levels are at. This is how much buildup I'm seeing in these elements, which is not really the word I'm looking for. And then you'll get a feel for it, just like most people have developed a feel for their freshwater tanks, and they know what to look for, and they kind of know the signs of, this is getting towards a water change, or this tank is doing really well, it's okay. But I'll turn over to the expert here, and
remember to test your salinity too.
Yes,
and that's bitten me more times than you can count.
Absolutely. And that's where I think a very valid point that I missed is top offs are more crucial than water changes, I think, in saltwater. Because you're more likely to run into evaporation issues a lot of times than you are to run into quote unquote poor water quality. And with the salinity, like Mike mentioned, that can definitely be an issue. Whereas, I may have a freshwater tank that gets a couple inches low. It's not going to affect salinity, of course, because there's no salt in there. Whereas if you lose a couple inches of water in a saltwater tank, you've definitely done a decent bit of increase to the salinity, because only the fresh water evaporates, like we discussed in episode number 2.
Yeah, I think that's where like a good auto top off is something that's invaluable. As long as, again, though, you do need to test, because that thing's, I'll put the auto top off on, set it, and forget it for months on end. Right. Next thing you know, you have clownfish living or attempting to live in fresh water or something, right? Something happens or whatever. There's a leak or who knows what, right?
Yeah. It's really easy, especially if you're an experienced freshwater hobbyist. It can be really easy to get in the set it and forget it mode, like you mentioned. Whereas I really want to get people more into that newbie mindset, if you will. That I'm just getting into something. I'm just learning something. As much as we want to make it easy, we also want you to be aware of things and understand that there are some differences, and that's what we're here for. That's why we're here to talk about it, and just kind of try and bring it all out in the open in a nice, easy format, and answer as many of the questions as we can. Let's see. Select Pet says, I learned the hard way, don't feed the Aptasia anemones. Yeah, the Aptasia is not your friend, typically speaking.
No. One thing I do want to say about water changes too is you're not only replacing the water, you're also replacing nutrients or the minerals as well, which is something maybe different than what you would think about in a freshwater tank. Very good point.
Yeah, and that comes into play a lot, particularly in your reef setups. I've got, I know Mike can't stand them because they grow so quickly, but I've got green star polyps, amongst other things, in my Nano reef. And boy, those things have taken off. I need to do another video for you all. I know the members have seen them a couple of times, but the tile that I had them on, it's about like that. They were maybe a half the tile, a little less than half. And they completely have covered that until they're to the point that I lean the tile against the back wall of the tank, because that was my plan, to get them on the back. And and they've already taken off onto the back wall of the tank and started growing there. But I know that they're using a lot of minerals and nutrients and things out of that water, along with other corals I've got in there. So I definitely want to do a water change, even if my other parameters are fine, because I have, essentially no fish in there. I have a cleanup crew, which is snails and crabs. But I still want to get those fresh minerals in, like you talked about. That's a very good point. Think about it almost in the same sense that you would replacing fertilizers in a heavily planted tank, except those are contained within that new water that you're bringing in versus just a squirt pump or whatever method you choose for fertilizers. Very good point, Mike. Let's see. Go ahead, Ed.
Did you see where Mike asked about canister filters?
I feel
He
like
said, is a canister filter a good filter for saltwater?
so let's keep in mind that going off of the premise that canister filters are essentially nitrate factories, I tend to say no. And let me finish before anybody crucifies me. It's not that I don't like canister filters, but we also have to take into account, I think, that in general, and this is not everybody, but typically speaking, the canister filter is the most neglected filter when it comes to filter maintenance. So you're a lot more likely to have your buildups and your breakdowns, and your buildups and harmful things, and your breakdown of the functionality, the restricted flow, and things like that in a canister filter, because we simply don't maintenance them typically as often as we maybe should. And that's my 2 cents. Are they efficient and are they used? Absolutely. Typically not the most common source, though. And I'll hand it over to Mike if he wants to elaborate, because I see the look on his face there. So, Mike, take it away.
I'm trying. Yeah, I'll take the bullet because I don't like canister filters, so I'll take the bullet. That's fine. But yeah, it gets too out of sight and out of mind. And like James said, it's nitrate. It's a nitrate factory. So for me personally, like I don't use them in fresh water either. I would rather use 18 sponge filters because I can see them before I stick a canister filter down in a sump somewhere and it sits there for 6 years from now and I realize it's still running down there and decide to change it.
Absolutely. I have definitely used them. I've got one running now that actually the seal, and this is one of my biggest pet peeves with them, is it seems like there's always a problem with the darn seal. I was running one on my 55-gallon salt. I don't even want to call it a setup. It's basically a holding tank right now for live sand and live rock, just to keep some flow going through there. And I had it on the bigger tank with the large saltwater eel for some additional pull-through filtration. So yes, I've used them. I really wouldn't personally recommend it. I've had the one that I won at the Big Fish deal last year in the raffle. It sat in the package for probably 6 or 8 months before I even touched the thing. I've got one back here that I won in that raffle at the local fish store swap last month. That'll probably sit in the box for 6 or 8 months. And, eventually I'll maybe decide to do a video about it, or I'll have a need. A lot of times what I might do is I'll use them to kind of get a cycle going. I'll throw it on a tank if I know I've got something coming up, and I'll get some bacteria in there, and then I'll throw it on the new tank to help start that cycle. But other than that, not a huge proponent, unfortunately. And I'm sorry. I know we've got some canister filter fans.
Oh boy. So I'll grab a question here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whip's World, there are 2 kinds of fish keepers: those who like canister filters and those who are wrong.
There's a beam for you.
There
Absolutely.
you go. So I'll respectfully disagree and move on.
Right. Well, I feel like if you do it properly, we're going to have an hour on canister filters next week. I'm just kidding. I feel like if you maintain them properly, they can be very useful, and I use them too, and they have their purposes, 100%. But I feel like it's too easy to neglect them, and for the intro beginner hobbyist, it happens a lot. I do want to get to this here, though. Chris Trapp says, how do you maintain / care for live rock? You know, we've talked about it being live rock, living organisms. Talked about, you know, local fish stores have it in vats and tubs and totes and all that. So what kind of care do we need to give the live rock, or what do we need to do for it to thrive?
I have generally put it in my tank, but you can cycle it. Basically, you put it in like a tote and with an air stone with salt water, obviously, and let it, you know, just let it sort of cook, we'll call it. Let me see. Anything else with it? Yeah, I mean, that's basically what a lot of people will do. What will happen is if you let it die, it'll have die off, and then it won't be live rock anymore. It'll just be normal reef rock. It'll just be like calcium rock, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of similar to in freshwater, if you were trying to run a bunch of sponges in a tank to get bacteria growing on them. So maybe you were trying to seed, you know, a bunch of sponges in a freshwater tank. If you didn't have the things required for that bacteria colony, eventually you just have a bunch of sponges blowing bubbles in a tank. I guess is the best way I can think to equate it to freshwater. But there's really not a whole lot of quote unquote care that goes into it. That's a good question, though. And then you've got things, you know, it's funny for rock to think about it, but your lighting comes into play, which you're typically going to have that anyways. But if you're doing, like I've just got a 55 gallon, like I mentioned, that's basically holding my sand and my rock until I set it up in the 90 gallon because I already had it established in another tank. I've got a saltwater light on there. It's a light that's going to go on that 90, it's sitting on that tank to keep things like the coralline algae and stuff like that. Which we'll get into more here in a minute. I guess we should kind of touch on the basics of live rock versus non-live rock and where to get it, though we've talked on that a little bit. And the reasons that you should, like you said, seed, because you'll hear that a lot when talking about live rock and your saltwater tank, seeding the tank with some live rock. Maybe like how much, I guess, you're looking to put in there. I think we've talked on it before because I know there are a lot of rabbit holes and we go down them frequently. But I think you had mentioned that the pounds per gallon is not really a big thing anymore. I know like 10, 15 years ago, there was like, well, you need, you know, like this many pounds per gallon was kind of the standard. But again, I've kind of been...
It's really dictated by the system, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can do other things. I mean, you can do, you know, talking about... you know, like the Zis filter, you can use K1 Caldas media, right? You can make a DIY thing and use that if you want. I mean, maybe not for a reef tank, but I've done that before on saltwater. So there's a lot of different things you can use. It's just one of those. I mean, again, there's a million ways to, you know, cook the burger per se.
Yes.
And you know, just like freshwater, there's a million ways to do it, and every way is different, but they all work.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, a lot of times you'll notice if you go into a fish store and they've got a saltwater selection, a lot of places you'll see they've got piles of dry rock that's sitting out, and then they've got live rock, like Ed mentioned, and you know, a lot of times it'll be in totes or tubs. I know Kenny, Aquatic Marine, which I'm still looking at your super chat. I haven't forgotten you, buddy, and I appreciate you. They've got several massive tubs that are actually part of their sump system from one of their display tank areas to keep, you know, so that they're in a system that has, you know, fish in it and all that stuff in an actual working environment, if you will, to keep it seated. And I think from a beginner's perspective, you may walk in, and Ed, you can correct me here if I'm wrong or affirm this. You may look and go, well, this rock is, I don't know, $4.99 a pound, and this other rock is $8.99 a pound. What's the difference, Mike?
I would say it's probably more seeded. I'd have to see it, right?
Yeah, so let's say that the one's dry. Sorry, I didn't
sorry.
specify it enough. Like your dry
Or maybe I
rock, you
missed
say
it
you
too.
can get it for
Yeah.
$4.99 a pound for your dry, and I'm making these numbers up.
Yeah. Boy, oh, you froze. Hold on.
Yep. Well, bummer. I heard a
So
pop.
I got the gist of it. So basically, what'll happen is that live rock that's $8.99 a pound, that will already have the bacteria in it. So you'll have the organisms, the bacteria, and everything, and therefore you basically, you're buying your salinity, or not your salinity, you're buying your microorganisms. Basically, that's what the difference in price is.
Now, what if I live next to the ocean? Could I just take some rocks out of the ocean and stick them in my tank?
That's basically what it is. That's what mariculture live rock is. They basically what we'll do. And actually, I have some coming next week, but they'll take like the dry rock that you see at the store, and they'll take it and put it out in the ocean, like in Florida, and it'll get all the organisms and a little bit of the coralline algae and everything on it, and then they'll sell it and ship it overnight to you.
And that's why you never know what you're going to get in your tank.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think a very, very common method is to go with a decent bit of that dry rock at the lower price, and then mix in some of that seeded rock. And I've definitely done that many a time, especially when I've got, I guess what you call show rock, if you will, where it's got the nice coralline algae growth on it. It's got like that reddish look to it, purplish look. If you've ever seen that in a fish store, you're not, like, why is that rock reddish, purplish, whatever. Using some base rock that's a little cheaper than getting those nicer seeded pieces on top of it and out in the open. I'm sorry about the technical issues. Our internet was actually off and it was the whole Comcast thing. The whole neighborhood went down for most of the afternoon. And I was like, okay, they're supposed to be fixed and everything fine before the show. So hopefully that's the only technical glitch that we'll have for the remainder. But yeah.
So I'm going to grab select pet
Absolutely.
question because it's on my screen. I got the two screens going. But is rock location still a thing? Years ago, rock was more desirable and specific locations were more expensive. So basically, there's a lot of conservation aspects when you get into saltwater, and they've really stopped a lot of the harvesting of live rock from the ocean. Like back when I started in 2007, 2008, you would actually get like Fiji live rock was more desirable than Florida. And there's been a lot of, with even shutting down of fisheries and stuff like that. So that that's really sort of died out, I'll say.
Yeah, I remember that was definitely a thing where, this is like you mentioned Fiji. This is Florida. There was definitely that aspect to it, especially if you got into some of the really upper echelon reef clubs and tanks of. This is so and so rock from this location here that was handpicked. That type of stuff.
It was Walt Smith's backyard.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Real quick, I do want to say a huge thank you to my buddy and my local fish store owner, Kenny at Aquatic Marine, for the $10 super sticker. The jumping up and down #1 fan pair. I appreciate you, Aquatic Marine. Thank you as always for your support, my friend. And our buddy Sean Chadwick.
Has it only been a week since we were at his shop?
I think so. Time flies. Yeah,
it does.
Yeah, I remember I watched last week. It was good. It was a really good show.
I appreciate it. Glad to hear it. Our buddy Sean Chadwick there with that customary $3 super sticker with the thumbs up, fist bump pair. I appreciate you, Sean. And I appreciate your comments on the videos, buddy. I really do. I was going through responding to comments earlier, and I know you comment on pretty much every video. So I do thank you for that, Sean. I thank you for the support as well. All right, I am a couple minutes behind. I'm going to roll through here, grab some things real quick. See T-Bone's Fishy saying hello. Hello to you, my friend. If it was not highlighted, I may miss it. I will apologize for that. Hey, Patrick Hardy. Oh, jump to the bottom. Nope, there we go. So I see Mike's Aquatics thing saying, I would like to do a sump, but knowing me, I know I would be able to drill a tank. What is your and Mike's thoughts on hang on back overflows? So, in terms of what's out there for, I guess, standardized, I feel like I've seen a lot of improvements over the past decade from when I really looked at those things. I do a lot of do-it-yourself type stuff, but Mike, you probably would know better than myself how the hobby's looking in that area on the hang-on backs.
I would honestly recommend learning how to drill the tank. Those things are notoriously bad for like stopping the siphon, and then you flood your room.
Yeah.
Things like, I mean, what I would do is if you want to learn how to drill a tank, like watch any of the videos that are out there. I have one. I know Corey did one. I'm sure there's plenty of other videos out there too. But literally just take a scrap piece of glass and just practice. And it's actually easier the bigger the tank, the less likely you are to break it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll be putting out one this week. A video of drilling glass.
Oh, nice. Awesome, Ed. Yeah, aqua lifters. I know those were a huge thing with the hangover style. It was it basically looked like an air pump, but what it did was it sucked water from the tank up through that pump and then out, and it maintained your suction on that because it was such a problem. You really wanted one of those involved. There are some different things in redundancies and whatnot, but I feel like I agree. I can't agree with Mike. Sorry, no, I'm just kidding. I agree with Mike that it really is, I think, worth the peace of mind factor to learn to drill the tank versus having that looming over your head of potential water flooding and spillage and all those horrible things that can go wrong. But I will say, if it's just something you're like, I'm not going to drill a tank, I can understand that. I mean, it's not salt, but on the 220, I'm probably going to go with some sort of hang-on overflow system that I designed myself. So I can totally get that because I don't want to. I've drilled tanks and I feel comfortable like, oh, I could drill 40s all day long. But something like my 220, my baby, that I've got to reseal, I can't. I won't risk that tank just because it's like, I know me and I know it's one of those when things can go wrong, they will go wrong, and that'll be the one tank that I screw up. So I can understand that aspect of it as well.
Yeah, and it's weird though because a lot of those bigger tanks are actually not the tempered glass and they're actually the easier ones to drill, like a 10-gallon. I've broken more 10 gallons than you can count.
Absolutely.
Trying to drill them.
No. And I agree with you 100%. Logic would dictate that it would be the simple one to do. It's just one of those that, even if I bust a 55, or a 40, it's like, well, I can replace that fairly easily. Where as a 220, I just am not willing to risk a biscuit. See, Nate said, hi guys, I always wanted to try saltwater and see a lot about nano saltwater tanks. Are these ideal for beginners? I have a 6-gallon cube, a 5.5, a 10, and a 29-gallon available to start a saltwater tank. So yes and no, right? When looking at it from the aspect of quote unquote bigger is always better, and looking at the ability of a larger tank to remain stable longer, they're not necessarily ideal. They can be in the essence of being able to get into the hobby, whereas I don't have or can't find a place to put a larger tank, or I just want a small tank. There's certainly nothing wrong with doing the nano tanks. They really are their own. I don't want to say trend. They're their own section of saltwater and reefs. Really, you have like people that's all they do is nano tanks. Just like you have people that primarily will do nano planted tanks, and there's a lot of beauty to be found in them. My first reef tank that I'm doing after over a decade of being out of reefs is a nano. It's a little fluval spec 5-gallon tank. The big thing to keep in mind, in my opinion, is just water parameters. Understand Just like with freshwater, your parameters are going to swing much more dramatically. The smaller the tank is, of course. It's primarily salinity, like Mike talked about. With your evaporation, you're going to have a lot more drastic swings in a smaller tank versus your larger tanks. So that would be my big thing to take a look out for. I think a 6-gallon cube, would make a beautiful little nano reef. Absolutely. I also think you'll probably find yourself wanting a much bigger tank. Once you get that thing going, you're going to be like, man, there's just not enough room in here to put all the cool stuff and the corals growing out. But Mike, your thoughts on that?
I'm always a fan of bigger is better when you're learning. But if you want to do a nano tank, have a big sump under it.
Yeah.
But that's just my it's my that's kind of how I grew up in it, I guess.
Yeah, no, and that I've definitely seen a lot of setups, and it's even kind of the norm, or at least it was, where maybe you have a 5.5 gallon display tank. That's your tank, and then you have that 29 gallon tank underneath. It's a do-it-yourself sump. So you're actually getting 34, 35 gallons in that system, but your display part for everybody to look at is just your 5.5. So that's definitely been a thing. Whereas we add sumps to freshwater, of course, too, to add water volume. It's not uncommon, at least it used to not be, and I think it's still not uncommon, to where people that have small tanks will have sumps that contain more water volume than their actual tank does.
Yeah, I had a buddy who literally had like 3 or 4 of the 100-gallon Rubbermaid totes in his basement for his 200-gallon tank. It was a flow through filtration system, protein skimmer, all that in the basement, and then he pumped all the water upstairs to his display.
Very nice, very nice. Chris Trapp, another awesome question here, says, will feeding unrinsed / frozen brine shrimp increase salinity? I don't think that it will do it enough to cause a severe impact. Not unless you're just dumping, like you're throwing a full frozen sheet in there every day in a little bitty tank. I really don't know that there would be a significant impact that would even be measurable, let alone detrimental, in my opinion.
That's kind of where I was at too. I mean, even if you threw the sheet in, I don't think those hold enough salinity in them.
Yeah. I think you would have to feed so much that you would foul your water before the salinity would become an issue.
Yeah.
I'm going to roll through here. All right. Did I make it? I think I made it to the bottom. If you had a question that I didn't get a hold of, sorry if I missed it. Feel free to throw that in there again. I was grabbing primarily highlighted stuff on the way through there. I do want to say a huge thank you to Whipsworld for the $5 super chat. Says, catching myself a little fish room fever and showing the canister filter love. Whipsworld, I appreciate you. Another person I get to spend some time talking to in the comments. I always enjoy that. And as always, thank you for your support. I forgot I had my button back. I made the kids find my noisemaker that they stole from me that I didn't have last week.
Oh, no.
So a huge thank you, Whipsworld. They love this thing. I need to go get them one. But I appreciate you. And that was for Kenny. And I do want to say
something. Lose theirs and take yours again.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I didn't forget you, Sean Chadwick. Thank you so much. I do appreciate all the support from you all. It really helps, especially with things like, Aqua Shella coming up in like 6 days. Really, really appreciate the support from the community. So thank you all for that.
I'm going to grab a question real quick from Chris. Asked another one. Have yellow tangs gone way up in price? And that would be yes, they have. Basically, what's happened is the Hawaii fishery they've basically shut it down. And that's where a lot of the yellow tangs would come from. So you're either stuck with like an Indo-Pacific or even a captive bred yellow tang, they're still getting it up to a production level that you could have that many tangs. In my opinion, the Hawaii fishery was one of the most well-managed fisheries out there, but, people with their own business interest mainly a scuba diver outfitter, sort of basically got legislation through the Hawaii legislature that basically shut the fishery down.
Well, it is unfortunately what it is sometimes. Sorry, go ahead.
The University of Hawaii, like, has the ability to reproduce them, but they don't want to share that information. How do you feel about that?
No, it's done. Actually, I know. I think it's Biota is actually doing it.
Well, their university figured out a good way to do it, but they won't share it. The technology. They were like talking about it just a month ago.
Yeah, well, I've met the guy who did the yellow tanks, the first guy to do it, at one of our Marine Breeders Initiative events. And he shared how he did it. I mean, it's basically what you're going to need is a large vat. You get a group of spawning tangs in there, and they're called pelagic spawners. So basically what happens is that when they spawn, we're going to use props. Is you have your two fish, right? We have the clownfish, you have the camera piece, because I don't have the other fish in here. Is they basically, they do a spawning rise, usually towards dusk, and then they deposit it, they fertilize the eggs, and they float around in the upper surface of the water as a zooplankton. And the real issue with those pelagic spawning fish is that it's basically figuring out what the first food was to feed them. So that was the real, I guess, the technology is like we talked about earlier, the parvocalinus copepods that we talked about in the beginning of the show. That was the technology that they needed to make the yellow tangs, the blue tangs, because there was people who were semi-successful with the pelagic fishes in the past, but they were living in Hawaii where you could go and get plankton toes. Well, I can't go to Lake St. Clair and get a plankton toe that would feed a yellow tang.
Right. So it was kind of like the same problem they had originally with neon tetras.
Right.
Just figuring out what to feed the babies.
Yep. And then they do go through a phase like a butterfly they call a metamorphosis, where it changes from like the larval state into, like, except for like a clownfish, it'll change into its normal mini clownfish, right? And that, and then it'll settle, which means it'll go find its home on the reef. So all of the fish go through that process, and that's where you experience a lot of the losses as well. So that goes to cleanliness of the water and bacteria and things called ciliates, and that's where it gets really technical, making sure you keep the water correct for those very small fish.
Absolutely, yeah.
No, that was the rabbit. That was the
no. You're good. Cool. There's always one, but no, I enjoy it, and I think others do as well. There's so many rabbit holes we could go down with this aspect of the hobby once you get into saltwater. It amazes me that we do manage to stay kind of as on topic as we tend to do and minimize rabbit holes, because you could go so many places. Mike's Aquatics and Things was coming back and saying that it is a 50-gallon acrylic tank. This was in reference to the overflow or the hang-on versus drilling, saying it's a 50-gallon acrylic tank. I know it's a mind thing for me, even attempting to drill a tank. Also, what size for a sump for 50 gallons? So,
actually, acrylic is easier than glass.
Yeah.
Just like drilling wood.
Yep.
And it'll stick, so it's not going to slide all over the place.
Yeah. Now, I will say, if you're going to drill glass, I definitely recommend making a template to help prevent the sliding and also to maintain some water on the glass. But without going down that rabbit hole, in terms of sump size, it really gets back into how big can you go with it? In terms of minimal size, if you're doing it for saltwater, take into account, ideally, your sump area, you want to be able to have your protein skimmers sit down in there. Of course, your heater, your return pump. You want to have a good amount of area for your mechanical filtration and your biological filtration. It's really nice if you can do it to get a sump big enough to have a refugium in there. Have your little area where you can grow some macroalgae and have like a little copepod farm, if you will, or whatever, and things like that. So, I know that's a non-answer. Mike, do you want to give? Do you have what you would?
I think you did it pretty well on that one. I mean, it was basically really where it's kind of as big as you want. I mean, you can do something too. Like I actually like to run an external skimmer, like off that doesn't sit in the sump.
Yep.
But that's a personal preference thing. But Select Pet said 110 gallon sump on a 55.
That's not uncommon.
No. I mean, you could get like, and I've made them out of like the Home Depot like HDX container. Like,
yeah,
just literally put a filter sock in it, a whole bunch of live rock and a pump in it, and you're good to go. And you can put a little, you could put like Catamorpha algae in it if you want, like in a bucket or something in there, and have water flow through it. The one thing I will talk about with sumps as a safety factor, just because I've done it to myself, is make sure to get a heater that has like a protective cover on it. Yes. So don't just put a glass submersible heater in there, because your rocks may move during flight and break said heater, and you stick your hand in the sump, and you may not want to do that again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that from personal experience. Let's put it that way.
Another thing to keep in mind, especially if you're creating your own sump and you're maybe moving or building your own compartments to it, is that you really don't want your heater in the same section of your sump as the return pump. That way, if you do run into an issue where that return pump runs that section dry, your heater is not out of water. So just in terms of crazy heater stuff, keep that in mind. But do you have any final things that you'd like to add? I know we've gone over by a minute or so.
I have time, so I don't know if you want to keep going or.
Yeah, no, I don't mind to keep going a bit.
Back to live rock. I mean, it's really. I don't think of any other thoughts on live rock, and honestly, a lot of times, like, I don't know, like I'm getting mine online just because, like the store closest to me doesn't really have the. I've seen the same live rock there for like the past 10 years.
Now,
it's a good store. It's a good store, but it's just.
Is most of it all the same color?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that whitish tan color.
Yeah, it's that whitish tan color. Yeah, there's not a lot growing on it, and I was just like, you know what? I'll just get some online.
Can you buy it like a red or a brown or a black live rock, like from some other place, or?
No, it's all pretty much that same color. That same kind of like the color that's behind me in the fish. Like, yeah, it's all that color. It's basically like you're not really going to find much color variance like you would with like Dragonstone or Sierra Stone or things like that.
And I really don't see as much as you used to the quote unquote premium rock. Premium rock, I think, used to be a lot bigger than what it is now, which already had like your coralline algae, which did have some of your colors to it that you might look and go, oh, well, this is a purple, kind of like what Ed has got, that it kind of mimics that coralline algae growth without having to do that.
Mine was actually soaked in the ocean for like a year or two, they said.
Oh, nice. So yours has got the, I guess, dead for lack of the word I'm thinking. But yeah, it's got that coloration to it. But that used to be a thing. It's like you had your base rock, you had your live rock, and then you had your premium that was already had all the pretty stuff growing on it. We'll call it the pretty stuff. And I don't see that quite as much. It's not necessarily a bad thing. But
I think that sort of went the way with a lot of like the base rock and everything. I think that sort of went the way with the Fiji rock and all that stuff, right?
I got you.
I think it came with the conservation end. People weren't going out and picking it out of the reef anymore. which is probably a good thing.
Absolutely. See, Mike's quite sorry for asking so many questions. Hey, no problems. He says this will be his final attempt at saltwater, and I want it to go well. No, that is what we're here for. We love the questions, and I
Me
appreciate
too,
it.
Mike.
Yeah, we are always happy to help, buddy.
I'll grab the Select Pets question about Purple Up.
Awesome.
There are certain. I'll answer it this way. There's certain things especially in the saltwater hobby, that will be classified as snake oil, and I will say that product is probably closer to that end of the spectrum than not.
What is it for?
It's supposed to help you grow coralline algae.
Okay.
It's a miracle in a bottle. Another way to put it.
I was trying as nicely as I could to say the answer.
Well, I'll bite the bullet on this one. I don't ever foresee Purple Up sponsoring me, so I'll bite the bullet on this one.
If they do, it'll be some pretty cool shirts.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back into, honestly, I wouldn't accept it, but just because I don't really want to have to say good things.
If you send me a shirt, I'll wear
it. You should take it and put it behind the wheel of your truck and drive over it.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, that must be some bad stuff.
Now, I will say that as with any product in any aspect of life, you will have people that swear by it. And I'm not here to disavow or, say that what they noticed didn't happen. But I would also say a lot of times that there may have been outside or external factors that weren't calculated into that success. So,
well, Mike, if you or I see it, let's don't buy it. We'll
yeah. So
we'll run an experiment.
Let's move on from that.
Not in our case.
We're going to go way down the rabbit hole now.
Yes, absolutely. So there is something I would like to mention, and this is going to sound like a shameless plug. But it's not, because it's not my product. And
is it mine?
There's no sponsorship here. No, this is actually something that Aquatic Marine does, and Rob may do it too at Aquatic Aesthetics. I don't know, Ed. But Kenny has got it set up. They carry tanks, of course, along with everything that you need pretty much. Aquatic Marine in Knoxville, Tennessee, my local fish store. But they have basically pre-built setups that you can buy. So if you're coming into it new, I think one of them is a 23 gallon. They've got two different bio cubes, which are awesome setups in and of themselves that make it really easy for people to get into saltwater. But they have the everything package. It literally includes everything but the fish, including your water, rock, sand, everything but the fish in those packages. And I really think that that's a wonderful idea to simplify it, because that's what we're here for. We're trying to make it simple. That makes it real easy to come in and say, I want to do a tank. Let me get that. It's everything but the fish. And then, they get you like, okay, get it set up, do this, bring us water sample. We'll let you know when you're ready to start stocking some fish into it. And that's awesome. And I appreciate that they do it, because I think is a great way to help get more people to the saltwater side. Shout out Kenny.
Yeah, that's awesome. About 5 years ago, I almost did that. We have a fish store here in Chattanooga called the Bermuda Triangle.
Okay.
And they have the exact same deal. But the fish that they recommended that I buy was an emperor angel for it, because I love them. They're this big, blue and white little striped guys or circles, but they get real big. They said, yeah, that would be fine in that bio cube. And so I didn't buy from them. Yeah. So I said, okay,
sorry to
talk to you guys later. And I won't give them business anymore because of that.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah.
So that's why you never hear the Bermuda Triangle on the Chattanooga Ed show.
It would have been the Bermuda Triangle for the emperor angelfish.
Yeah.
Sorry. It was a bad joke.
Let's see. Select Pet said Mike's answer is a lot more politically correct than my response would have been. Yeah. We try and stay moderate on here with the products. We don't really like to bash anybody, but we want to be honest with you all, whether it's good or bad. Aristotle 760. Wow, I'm dyslexic all of a sudden. Have you used ARC pink and purple live cultures before? I have not. Mike?
No. And maybe in the I don't know. I don't know the product, so I'm not going to say anything.
Gotcha. I would ask Ed if he has, but he's not delved into the world of salt previously, so we'll give him the automatic no.
And I didn't even hear what the question is, but I know it is.
So if you were looking at your YouTube, like home YouTube page there, and you look at the top, you can go over to the community tab and click on it for any of your channels you're subscribed to or that you're viewing that have a community tab. And that will have all their postings. You know, you can post pictures or just polls or, just a little, hey, how's it going? Videos. Because members only post videos, all that stuff is not fully out there. It's kind of in beta mode. It doesn't always go out to everybody. Just like we did the one members only live stream and we had one person show up. And that was great because he came up on screen and we hang out and talked, but nobody else got notifications for it. YouTube's like, we're not telling anybody. We don't care if they even pay you because they like your channel so much that they're members. We're not going to tell them.
Yeah, James and I were the only two people there, and then Rico showed up, and we were like, "Come on up, Rico."
Actually, the Rocking Fish has a pretty good one for the purple up. He's like, we could get some purple up for Kenny East so he could use it during the Viking season.
There you go. Absolutely.
He can use it in his horn.
Maybe he could bleach his skin with it.
Become the purple people eater.
Yeah, no, your coral's doing really well. Everything's doing really well in that nano tank. It's in the fluval spec. So the green star polyps are growing onto the back glass. So I'm about to cut away the plate of it from the back glass and just let it completely cover that. Hey, speak of the devil and he shall appear. What's going on? Danny Aquatics.
Now, I've got a question, or kind of a question. I want to tell Mike about something that we saw last week.
Okay.
We saw a coral eating a clownfish.
Was it a coral or an anemone?
It was a coral.
I thought it was an anemone.
Our anemones are like this, though. Don't they have all these little things? This thing looked like one of those. It was green with the yellow stripes on it, and they have a hole right in the middle with a mouth.
Could be like a.
But
how big was the clownfish? Was it a baby clownfish or was it like a monster one?
It was about an inch, but the thing was like on a frag even. So it couldn't have. Oh, come on, Nico. It couldn't have gone into the thing very deep because it wouldn't have a stomach really. And the guy said, "Yeah, it's just going to slowly digest it, super slow."
Because maybe like an can or something. I mean, I guess it could.
But it was. How did it get the thing in its mouth to begin with? I
think the clownfish had either passed away before.
Well, yeah, but I mean, would it just die on top of it? Just dumb luck?
Or it could have been a thing of opportunity, maybe, or like Aristotle 760 said, maybe it was a carpet anemone too.
Yeah.
Darn it! I wish I would have taken a photo. It's the craziest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
But normally, clownfish have a relationship with anemones that they don't get stung either. Yeah. That's what makes it odd.
Well, it looked like one of those round type of corals, not an anemone.
Yeah, I need to see a picture because, like, I didn't think like acans and that type of coral would eat like a clownfish, but maybe I mean it's been a while.
It was the weirdest thing I ever saw. We'll have to ask Kenny or Isaac because I pointed it out to Isaac and he already knew about it.
Yeah, so. I'm curious now. Let me know what it is. I'm curious.
I didn't actually see it, but I overheard it, and what I heard was Isaac. Oh yeah, the anemone. Yeah, it's fine.
don't
but
think
I
he
didn't
said
actually see it. But Select Pet says that's how I learned not to feed Aptasia. It ate a chromis. It stung it and grabbed it, then stung me when I tried to get it back. Yeah. It's one of those things, if you're new to saltwater, you see all these funny looking things growing out. You're like, oh, that's neat. What are these things growing? I got, free cool things that came in my live rock. And then you find out they're these awful little devil Aptasia.
Yeah, people used to shoot them with lasers.
Yeah.
There's people who actually would get lasers and would zap them with lasers.
Yeah. And that's a whole nother world. If you've got any questions that you would like answered that maybe we missed in the first half or we missed up to this point, feel free to throw those in the chat. That way we can kind of keep it somewhat closer to an hour, just given that the maintain the series length kind of similar and keep it not short but precise.
Yeah,
that's a good way to put it for the series and for beginners that maybe come upon this later on, because that's another huge part of this is we want to make a library of information for Simple Saltwater. But if you've got questions, we would be happy to answer those. Kitty E, what's going on, brother? Thank you for the $5 super chat. Says, LOL, just happened to come in when Mike said that. Great timing. No super chat required, Kenny, but I do appreciate you, my man. I really do. I'm looking forward to the next time we get to hang out. I'm going to miss not seeing you this upcoming week at Aquashella. But again, I do appreciate you, brother. I really, really do.
Now, do these things have a mouth in the middle?
Yes.
And that's a coral, isn't it?
I think it is. What is it called? Does it say what it is on the picture? I'm sorry, I'm looking at your screen and I look really weird in camera. This screen.
Class rows or something? Class RO, and then it goes ... I've
seen that before, and I'm blanking on the name of it.
Doggone it. It doesn't have actually what these round things are called.
All right, hold on.
But it was a round one, just like this, and it has like a hole in the middle where it has like a mouth.
Is it like a brain coral? Hold on.
I don't think they're a brain coral. They're a different thing because I think they go like this also.
Aristotle
at night.
But I couldn't really see it.
Yes, fungia plate. Yes, that's what that is. He's right. I think those do eat. Those could eat something like a small clownfish.
It was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen because it's on a frag, stuck to a frag, but it would only have this much thickness to it, and the fish was thicker than the frag and the thing, It was just so weird.
Aristotle trophy here. That one's for you, Aristotle.
Yeah, it looks like that would eat a clownfish.
So strange.
Yep. It's almost like it's like an anemone, because remember, like corals are not plants, they're actually animals. They do use light to help feed themselves, but they are actually animals. So it's not unheard of for a coral like the one that Ed just showed us to eat something like a small clownfish.
It definitely
so now a full-size adult, I would be surprised.
I just didn't know how it even was able to get it in its mouth.
So a lot of corals have, you don't see them all the time, but tentacles that will come out. These little feeder tubes, if you will, that reach out. Just like your coral that you've got here, Ed, it's actually got these really cool little glowy white strings that'll reach up out of the middle and kind of into the water column.
Is mine the best one you got?
It's the best one of yours that I have, Ed. It is the number one.
That's what I want to hear.
I mean, corals do have allelopathy, right, where they'll attack each other like plants do. Like if you put certain corals too close to each other, one will kill the other one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
This cat, I need to give her a bath or something because she does not smell good today.
On that note, I do want to say a huge thank you to my buddy Mike's Aquatics and Things.
We've now really gone down the rabbit hole.
Absolutely. I'm going to have to add a thank you in because I think I'm going to cut the last 10 minutes of the stream here.
Yeah, I think so.
But Mike's Aquatics and Things, I really do appreciate that $10 super chat. I had fun talking to you earlier in your live stream. I keep meaning to be available to hang out in one of yours, and I'm sorry I haven't thus far, but I do appreciate all your support, my friend, and know I'm supporting you right back. But he had $10 super chat that said, "So love this series." Well, I'm enjoying doing it. I really am. I think it's something fun that is hopefully helpful to people. And, you know, maybe we can get some more people into the saltwater side of the hobby. Maybe we can get some people that are already into the saltwater side of the hobby some simplified answers and some good information to help make life easier and keep them there. You know, that's a big part of this hobby in both sides of it and all aspects of it is keeping people in the hobby because there's so many ways to screw things up and people get fed up. So we appreciate you and we're happy to do it. And I can't thank Mike, Fish Tank Barn, and Chattanooga Ed enough for doing this with me. Mike handles the brunt of the questions and the abuse as our resident expert here, and I really do appreciate you for that, Mike.
Oh, that's no problem. It's fun.
Final thing I'm going to grab here. Paul Sotero says, sorry, I got to move the party popper streamer off there. Can't make it to Aquashella. I have to head up north, but I will be going to the first in-person social / auction of the Raleigh Aquarium Society Thursday night.
Awesome.
I'm sorry we won't see you there, Paul. Awesome that you're getting to attend that.
Yeah, I said awesome, but I didn't mean that we're not going to see
awesome. Ed thinks it's awesome. He's not going to see you. No, I know that's
that was one guy I didn't want to see.
But it is going to be a blast. Just a final reminder, if you're watching this live still, Orlando Aquashella, Ed and I will be there along with lots of other awesome people. We're looking forward to meeting a whole bunch of you guys. So if you're going to be there, come say hi to us. Don't be afraid. We love it when people say hi to us. I say that because I've had people that have been hesitant to come up to even me. And I'm like, I'm nobody special. Come up and say hi, you know? So please, we enjoy that. I would say, do me a favor. If you've made it this far, first check out Fish Tank Barn there, down that guy, and Chattanooga Ed. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you would like to see coming up in the Simply Saltwater series. You know, we've discussed recommendations for tank size, sourcing and maintaining your water, and now live rock and substrate. So I'd love to hear what you all would like to see. You know, we've got so many things we could talk about in terms of sumps and equipment, and corals. And we're going to get to it all, but if there's something you'd maybe like to see before some other stuff, since we're only doing this series like once a month, feel free to let me know in a comment. Final thoughts, questions, Ed?
Looking forward to it. Hopefully by the next stream, I'll have water in my tank.
All right. And Fish Tank Barn, Mike, any final thoughts from you, my friend?
Don't have fun at Aquashella. You know, check out maybe some of the saltwater speakers there as well. If you're interested in saltwater, if you're going, you know, I think Richard Ross is speaking, who is excellent, and a few of the other guys as well. I'll have to look and see who's speaking, but I'm pretty sure that they're all pretty good.
If we drop your name, will they be like extra nice to us?
Maybe.
Nice.
Depends which one.
Oh, goodness. Well, I do appreciate both of you gentlemen. And as always, everybody that showed up, appreciate you guys very, very much. The lurkers, listeners, the super chatters, contributors, and supporters. You guys, of course, the moderators, for everything that you all do. Very, very much appreciated. The replay crew, I thank you guys. I really, really do. It amazes me how many people come by and watch the replays, and I can't thank you all enough for that. Until next time, keep your fish healthy. Keep yourselves healthy. Don't be afraid to go get salty. Take care, everybody. See you on the next go round.
Take care.